Hi, I'm Nate Savage, and in this lesson, I'm going to teach you 5 guitar strumming patterns that you must know if you're a guitarist. Now, if you're a newer guitar player who's learned most of your open chords and feels like your strumming hand has been kind of left behind, this lesson is going to be perfect for you. The 5 strumming patterns in this lesson are very progressive, and by that, I mean once you learn the first one, the second one builds off the first one, the third one builds off the second one, and so on. Now, you're likely going to be familiar with a couple of these strumming patterns in this lesson, but I would encourage you to follow along because I'm going to be giving you some tips that are going to be important for your career as a guitarist. Throughout this lesson, I'm going to be keeping the chords really simple. I'm only going to be using an E chord. That way, you can focus all of your attention on your strumming hand, getting your timing really well, and learning these patterns that I'm going to teach you. In fact, if you want to focus on your strumming hand even more, you don't even have to make any chords. You can just mute the strings like that and focus on the strumming patterns. All those strumming patterns in this lesson are 8-note strumming patterns. So if you don't know how to count 8 notes, I'm going to go over that with you real quick. When you hear a song, most songs are in 4/4 times, so you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Those would be quarter notes usually. Now, to count 8 notes, all you have to do is stick an and in between each number. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, you would have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's the basic idea behind 8 notes. And the idea is to space out the counting, the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, as evenly as possible with these strumming patterns. So as I mentioned, all of these strumming patterns are going to be 8th-note based strumming patterns. So you're going to see 8th notes displayed at the bottom of the screen to help you kind of learn all 5 patterns. Let's get into this first strumming pattern, and this one may seem very simple, but it's very important. It's an all downstroke strumming pattern using 8th notes. You can tell that it's an all downstroke pattern by the little kind of upside down U symbol on each beat, each 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And like I said, this may seem really simple to you, but don't discount it. It's very important to be able to do simple things very well. I was in a studio session playing some acoustic guitar, and I had all these fancy strumming patterns lined up in my mind, and the producer said, no, just do a straight all downstroke strumming pattern, right? I did it, and it ended up sounding great, better than the stuff I had planned. It may seem easy, but this is an essential strumming pattern that's really going to help you develop your timing. So grab a metronome, put it on, or a jam track, and work on using an all downstroke strumming pattern using 8th notes. Really focus on your timing and work on keeping all the 8th notes evenly spaced. Another thing that you can work on with the strumming pattern is dynamic control. With such a simple strumming pattern, it's easy to work on getting really soft, getting a little bit louder, and getting really loud. Because as guitar players, when we get quiet, we tend to drag a little bit. And when we get louder, we tend to rush a bit. So this is a great strumming pattern to work on that too. Remember, don't just lock your wrists and strum from your elbow either. Relax, get some wrist motion in there. Almost pretend like something's stuck to your finger and just trying to flick it off. Here's how you can work with this strumming pattern to help you develop your dynamics. Using a strumming pattern like this to warm up and just kind of get yourself centered and your mind focused on your timing is awesome. Now, strumming pattern number 2, believe it or not, is the exact same rhythm as strumming pattern number 1. But instead of using all downstrokes, you're going to be using down and up strokes alternating. You can tell that we're going to be using upstrokes on every other strum because if you look at the ands, above the ands, you're going to see little arrows. Those are upstroke symbols. So the way this works out for the counting for the downstrokes and upstrokes, the numbers are going to be downstrokes. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be downstrokes. And the ands will all be upstrokes. This is an incredibly useful strumming pattern, and it's also the basis for all of the other strumming patterns we're going to learn in this lesson. Now let me just tell you, a lot of newer guitar players think that they have to hit all of the strings when they do an upstroke strum. And that's not really the case. When I do a downstroke, I generally hit all 6 strings if it's a 6-string note chord. But with my upstroke, I generally only hit like the top 3 or 4 strings. That makes it a lot easier to get that upstrokes through the strings when you're doing a lot of strumming. So try this pattern, relax, don't lock your wrist, and concentrate on keeping the strumming as even as possible. So work on this pattern, get it down, make sure to practice it with a metronome or a jam track or something like that. And once you have it down and it's sounding good with a metronome, you could start to put accents anywhere you want to. In this case, I'm just going to show you an example of what happens when I accent the downstrokes on 2 and 4. And being able to throw accents in like that is really useful because no matter what song you're playing, if it's an 8th note based strumming pattern, you can put the accents in a place that fit the song you're playing with. Strumming pattern number 3 is very similar to strumming pattern number 2, but we're going to introduce a new stylistic element called a muted strum. A muted strum gives you a more percussive sound, and basically what we're doing is we're kind of copying the sound of a drum kit. When you hear a drum player play 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, on 2 and 4, they're hitting the snare. So that snare sound is what we're going to be emulating. Before we get into the strumming pattern, let me just show you how to do a muted strum real quick. What you're going to do is when you come down to do this muted strum, what you're going to be doing is a downstroke. You're going to let off the pressure on the strings with your left hand a little bit. And as you go through the strings, or right before, you're going to come down and kind of hit the guitar and mute the strings as your pick passes through the strings. So. So the strumming pattern we're going to use this with is a straight down, up, down, up, down, up, alternating 8-note strumming pattern. But after the 1 and, on the 2, you're going to use a muted downstroke strum. And then you're going to do another upstroke. So it's really only a 2-beat strumming pattern that just repeats over and over again. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you look at the graphic for this strumming pattern, you can tell that you're supposed to do a muted strum by the little X that's over the 2. So slow this one way down if you have to. Don't be afraid to really dig into the guitar with that muted strum. This strumming pattern always reminds me of CCR, and I love that. It's just a really cool sound. And once you get the muted strums down, you can stick them in anywhere in any strumming pattern. Okay, in strumming pattern number 4, we're going to start to rest on some of the counts. Up until now, we've been digging into the strings on all of the 8th notes. Now we're going to start leaving some of them out. You may not realize it up to this point, but you've been making use of a very important technique called the constant strumming technique. Look back at strumming pattern 2. You had strict alternating down, up, 8 notes. So you had a constant strumming pattern down, up, down, up, down, up. We're going to continue that up and down motion for this strumming, but now we're going to leave some of the 8th notes out. Stay with me because this is all going to make a lot more sense once you learn the strumming pattern. If you look at the and of 1, you can see it's grayed out. There's nothing there. Normally, if you're playing a straight 8th note strumming pattern, you would play 1. It would be played with an upstroke. But this time, there's nothing there. There's no strum there. So we're going to go down, and we're still going to come back up, but we're not going to dig into the strings this time. On beat 2, we're going to play down, up. So the whole strumming pattern, very simple, 1 and 2. You're going to keep that up strumming motion going even though you're not digging into the strings. You can play the same exact thing for beats 3 and 4. So 3 and Now, it's very important when you're learning strumming patterns like this, when you're first getting started, to count out loud. That way you can keep track of where you are. And sometimes it helps to exaggerate the motions just so you can keep track of where you are as well. So let's try this pattern with a metronome real quick. So work on this, relax, stay loose, and make sure you have a constant motion with your strumming hand when you're working on stuff like this. Also, remember that your upstrokes don't have to go through all 6 strings. You can hit just the top 4 strings or so. Strumming pattern number 5 is a little bit more complex than the other strumming patterns, and it uses that same constant strumming technique that we were talking about. When I hear this pattern, I always think of a ballad, so I'm calling this the ballad strumming pattern. Take a look at this pattern displayed below. Notice that the strum on beat 3 is grayed out, and that's going to give you a different feel because this time we're leaving out a downstroke. So you have 1, 2, 3. So basically we're just leaving out the downstroke on beat 3. We're not digging into the strings, but we're still making that downward motion. And the rest of the strumming is just straight 8 notes. 1, 2, 3. So remember to keep your strumming arm going and leave out that downstroke that occurs on beat 3. As a newer guitar player, you're probably going to have to find the happy medium between holding onto the pick tight enough to where it doesn't fly out of your hands, right? But you have to hold onto it loosely enough so where you won't tense up so you can keep a nice relaxed feel going. So now you have 5 basic strumming patterns under your belt, and it may take you a while to get these down and get them perfect, but the cool part about it is once you can play these and you understand what's going on with the constant strumming technique and everything, you're going to be a lot closer to being able to pick out the strumming patterns in your favorite songs and make up your own cool strumming patterns. And if you want to dress these strumming patterns up, you can just put accents in there, you can do muted strums, and you can even try leaving out other notes with the constant strumming technique. Always play along with the metronome, or better yet, play along with the jam track. It's always best to apply what you're working on to a real musical setting. Thanks for watching this video. I just launched a brand new guitar lesson series that you can get right now for free. Just go to guitarsystem.com/free-series. I'll see you there.